Okay, this is a 15-minute follow-along core video focusing on deep core activation, and you're just going to need your yoga mat and yeah, I'm shirtless, but that's for a good reason. What we want to do is focus on our connection to the mat, the physical connection, and it's best to have skin to the mat, and that really gives us some great feedback on where we're holding our lumbar spine and our thoracic spine. So you can see there that I'm bringing my lumbar spine there off the mat. We want to avoid that through this entire session. What we want to do is get as much contact with our back as possible throughout this session. So what I'm doing initially here is just trying to flatten my back as much as possible. I've got my feet on the ground and I'm just feeling what it's like to have my back on the ground. Now I've raised my hands up above my head firstly, and then kind of coming into this crunch position and lifting my shoulder blades off the ground as far as I can. So now we're going to go through some reps of that. We're going to do about 8 reps. So hands up first, head off the ground, shoulders off the ground. And yeah, you can see this is basically like a crunch, but we're doing it very carefully, very slowly. Our feet are on the ground, knees at about hip distance apart, and just going through that nice slow crunch. Really focusing on that lumbar spine. We want to keep that completely flat. Don't let it come off the ground like that. Keep it perfectly flat on your yoga mat as you come up. You want to breathe out as those shoulder blades come off the ground. Reach as high as you can with your fingertips. If you find that you're struggling to keep your lumbar spine on the ground as your hands come back over your head like that, then just don't bring them all the way to the ground. Just keep them sort of at 45 degrees or whatever angle you need to keep that lumbar spine pressed in. And this is really just a process of discovering where that tightness affects your core. Where are the other muscles within your body that are tight, that are affecting the way that your core moves. Okay, our next move is this modified dead bug. So we're going to come up, bring your knees directly above your hips, and we're more or less going to do the same movement. So this is a modification where we're coming into posterior pelvic tilt. So I'm really tucking my hips down and underneath. These reps I'm doing a little bit faster because it doesn't require as much control. Going to do about 8 to 10 reps here as well. Same thing where we're really drawing those shoulder blades up off the ground, reaching high with our fingertips, breathing out as we come up and in on the way down. Okay, our next little move is going to require some sort of implement. I'm using just a little ball that I found at the dollar store. You can use whatever you like. You can use a foam roller, a cushion, anything you can. We're going to put that between our knees, making sure that our feet are hip width apart. I'm going to put some pressure on that implement between my knees, and what we're going to do now is just focus on the breath for a couple of rounds. So I'm squeezing with my adductors, squeezing in with the ball. Got my hand on my mid sort of chest there, and I'm just feeling what happens to my lower back as I go through those deep breaths. So I'm trying to expand my chest. We're not breathing through the belly, we want to breathe into the chest. And now we're going to come into this adductor glute bridge. So there shouldn't be any change through the spine as we go through this movement. You want to feel your lumbar spine and your thoracic spine completely engaged and flat on the mat, and you want to hold that position as you come up and extend your hips. So we don't want any change in the way the spine is sitting. Obviously we're squeezing our glutes there, squeezing through the knees into the implement, and then slowly lowering down. After 8 to 10 reps, we can hold for a 10-second hold where we're really solidifying that position. Again, squeezing the glutes, We want to breathe here and just keep the hips high for 10 to 15 seconds to finish off the set. Our next move, I'm going to spin around here, and we're going to get into a similar move. It's going to be the adductor hollow hold. So again, grabbing our little implement here. Mine's from FC Barcelona. Not really a football fan, but it was the cheapest thing in the store. You don't need anything special for this. Squeezing our knees in, we're going to come up into a hollow position now. So pulling our shoulder blades off the ground, pulling our feet off the ground, and you'll notice that my knees aren't directly above my hips, they're kind of forward of my hips. And I'm pulling my shoulder blades off the ground, kind of crunching with my abs, and I'm really trying to solidify my lower back on the floor again. So we're going to hold that position. I'm reaching forward with my fingers. I'm trying to drop my shoulders as much as possible. So I'm trying to pull my scapula down towards my hips. Here we're just going to hold for 30 seconds. And that's something you can build up to, holding it for 45, 50, building up to a minute. And I've got a whole separate video on the hollow, which I'll link up above here that you can check out. Okay, we're going to stay with the ball between the knees, and we're going to go into some rotation now. So there's basically 4 ways that we can train our core. We can do flexion, isolation, which we've already done both of those. Now we're getting into rotation, and then we're going to finish off with extension. So the aim here is for me to keep my hands, elbows, shoulders all on the floor. We don't want them to come off at all. But at the same time, what we want to do is rotate through the hips. And you can see that I'm bringing my knees over to one side, squeezing the ball the whole time. So we're getting some nice thoracic mobility with that rotation. We're also learning to control our core and activate our adductors as we're moving through this drill. I'm keeping my feet together as well, that's important. Feet and knees squeezing together, just adjusting the ball there. And we're rotating over. So it's a really good way to learn to control the core through rotation. So much of our control through various sports comes from rotating through the core, so it's a nice little drill. Okay, next one. We are going to utilize another implement, in this case just a chair, and we're going to come into an elevated cat. So you'll need a chair or something about the height from your knee to your hips. Any kind of bench if you're in the gym. And I'm going to place my hands at shoulder width apart, keep my elbows straight. And what I'm going to do here is round my back slightly, keep my core engaged, and I'm going to press slightly into the chair. And you can see that I'm creating a similar kind of position that you would when you're holding a hollow. So keeping my ribs tucked, abs on, and I'm trying to keep that nice round back there that you can see. So here I'm just kind of solidifying the position, I'm just getting used to it. A little bit of pressure on the chair through my hands. Again, elbows straight, and really trying to create distance between my hands and my hips. Now we're going to do a more of a dynamic version of that. So this is the elevated cat press. So here I'm going to go through pressing down, keeping my pushing my chest to the floor, and then doing the opposite as we come up, rounding the back, tucking your butt underneath, spreading the shoulder blades as you come up and pressing that space between your shoulder blades. We're trying to press that up away to the sky. So we're going to go through reps there of keeping that nice rounded posture and then pressing down. So we're going to move onto our knees now, and we're going to go into a really beginner version of the gymnastic plank. So we're going to be on our knees, elbows and hands at shoulder width apart, nice and parallel. And again, we're practicing that rounded back posture where we're spreading our shoulder blades apart, trying to round our back. And here, obviously, core is engaged, glutes engaged, and we're in posterior pelvic tilt. So here we're just holding that position, trying to build some strength around the supportive muscles of the spine, like serratus anterior, erector spinae. We're building some isometric strength there. Really sucking my belly in, keeping my ribs tucked, and just pressing slightly into the ground with my elbows and hands. Once we've held that for anywhere between 30 to 60 seconds, we're going to go into a scapular push-up. So a very similar position to start off with, but what we're going to go through is retracting and protracting the shoulder blades. So I'm trying to keep my shoulders down, but at the same time we want to retract as I'm pushing my chest to the ground, retract my shoulder blades, and then protract as we come up, where we're pushing our mid back to the sky there. So we're just going to go through reps, around 10 reps. And the idea is that we're keeping that nice posterior pelvic tilt through the hips whilst going through that rotation. And to make this more difficult, you can do it on your toes, but really I encourage you to build the strength in this position, build the control by starting on your knees and getting a really good feel for what it's like to be working through that protraction of the scapula. Okay, now we're going to come up into a seal press. Also, similar to an upward dog, but it's more about feeling what's going on in your hips, your lumbar spine, your thoracic spine when you're in this position. So we want to roll the shoulders back, chest out, really squeezing the glutes. We are putting a lot of pressure into the lumbar spine here. You can see that I've basically got a 90-degree angle almost in my lumbar spine there. But because I'm squeezing my glutes, I'm protecting my lower back, and it's totally fine to be in that position. You probably won't be as mobile as I am through that position, but it's okay. You'll build up over time. So I just held there for kind of 30, 40 seconds. We're going to have a little rest, come back down to the mat, and then pressing the hands into the floor and coming back up. Okay, now we're going to get into the final exercise, which is back raises. So training extension. So lifting the chest up off the ground, squeezing the glutes, and really the only thing that should be in contact with the mat here is your hips, maybe a little bit of your thighs, squeezing shoulder blades back, lifting hands and chest up off the ground, and really lengthening, elongating through the spine. So we're trying to pull your head away from your toes, really making yourself long in that position there. Okay, that is our final move for this 15-minute core drill. I hope you enjoyed that. Come back and hit this up 4, maybe 5 times a week. You're going to see excellent results in building that core strength from the ground up, quite literally. I'll leave you with that, guys. Enjoy.